you. Hello, I am Jackie McIlwain, and thank you so much for coming this evening. So this is the first of the series in the Musicians Wellness Lecture Series. Today we're going to be talking about music training versus athletic training. We will discuss a little bit about my history and my story and how I got interested in musicians wellness. Then we'll talk a little bit about the organization Performing Arts Medicine Association. I'll probably refer to this often as PAMA. Then we'll talk about traditions of music and athletic training, and then how we can incorporate more healthy practices within our music practice and pedagogy. So my story began when I was an undergraduate student in clarinet performance. I was experiencing a lot of pain and neuropathy or numbness. When I was in high stress situations, such as a recital, my right arm would go completely numb past my elbow. And of course, this was very alarming as a budding musician. And I worked with my clarinet professor a lot, and we talked about hand position, and we did everything that we thought we could do. And when I was still experiencing a lot of pain, he referred me to a School of Music faculty member who was also trained in Alexander technique and body mapping. I was so intrigued with the lesson I took from her that I decided to take her semester course the next semester. I was instantly hooked. I was learning a lot about my body, about how we can move our body and how we can make that movement more efficient. And by the end of the semester, I had noticed a marked improvement with my breathing, with my performance, with the pain level that I was experiencing. The pain had just decreased significantly. And I knew that this was something I really needed to invest myself in. So I did a lot of research and I kept that study going until I went on to my master's, and I maybe got a little too cocky and decided that I was fixed. So I went on to my master's degree at Indiana University, and I practiced. I worked so hard, and there were a lot of components when you move to a new school. There's, it's a new location, new people, new environment, new teacher, and the stress that it took on my body was significant. And it was at that point that I actually hurt myself even more than I did the first time. And so I decided that I needed to go back to my Alexander technique training and body mapping training. And as I did, I realized that it was something that I needed to do every day for myself, for my own health, for my body, for my musicianship. I have devoted myself every day to this, and it has helped me go on in the career that I love, and I'm so grateful for it. I no longer have any pain, or numbness for that matter, and I went on and finished my doctorate at Florida State. Then I started teaching, and I started seeing issues with student body use issues in my students, and I realized, okay, I see the problem, but I don't have the tools or the vocabulary to help my students. That inspired me to go on and start and complete my body mapping training, in which I completed in 2017. More recently, I discovered that PAMA, or the Performing Arts Medicine Association, offers a course for arts educators. I was immediately interested and completed the coursework over this past summer, and really enjoyed that information that I learned. So much so that it inspired me to do this lecture series. There was so much information that I learned and that I wanted to share with you all, and felt it was my duty to share with you all. Which leads me to my mission and vision. My vision is to see musicians performing pain-free. My vision includes musicians feeling freedom within their own bodies and their own music making. To accomplish my vision, my mission is to provide mind and body education and resources to as many musicians as possible, so this information becomes embedded into the music education tradition and pedagogy. So PAMA has devoted itself to promote health, safety, injury prevention, and treatment for special needs of all performing artists. It was incorporated in 1989 and provides education for healthcare professionals and arts educators. If you would like to learn more about PAMA, you can go to their website, artsmed.org. So now we're going to take a look at comparing music training and athletic training. So why choose athletic training versus music training? Well, we both perform under pressure. That pressure could be put on ourselves. It could be put on by teams or coaches or ensembles. It doesn't matter how you look at it, but we're all under pressure when we perform. It takes years of dedication for our training, both as athletes and as musicians. We often use the saying, no pain, no gain, which I hope will leave our vocabulary very soon. We practice or perform almost daily. And we perform in environments that often change and come with their own challenges. For instance, athletes often have to travel, which then leads to different sleeping arrangements, different food intake, and different arenas or fields or courts that they have to perform in. We as musicians have to perform in different halls. We cannot control the temperature of the halls. We have to adjust and make that work for us. And also, we all may incur a career-ending injury. I do believe that within the field of music, we have learned how to overcome many of those injuries that were once considered career-ending, in particular, focal dystonia. There's been a lot of research ongoing for focal dystonia, and they've made a lot of strides with that, and people have overcome that. So I think that's very encouraging. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between athletes and musicians. Athletes often use larger muscle groups, whereas musicians often use smaller muscle groups. We often use, our breathing mechanisms, our fingers, and it's a lot of repetitive motion. With athletes, a lot of times they're running across a large field or court, and often using their arm muscles within that, whether that's, to throw a ball or toss or dribble, or with soccer players, they're kicking a lot. And for us musicians, we're often thinking and using more of the fine motor skills instead of the large muscle groups. Practice and rehearsal time requirements are often regulated within sports. And in the music realm, we often we have this tendency to practice more. I need to practice more. I need to practice more rehearsals. And we kind of don't think about what our bodies may or may not need or can handle. Performing arts medicine is relatively new, roughly from the 1970s, with limited evidence-based literature. There is evidence that there has been some arts medicine starting as early as the late 18th century. However, sports medicine has been around significantly longer, since around the 5th century. An athlete's goal is victory. A musician's goal is to engage with the audience, embrace creativity, and aspire for aesthetics. It's a different ballgame. Thanks. All right, so we're going to take a look at some numbers. These are directly from PAMA, and this is for professionals and undergraduate student athletes and musicians and dancers, actors. So as far as athletes, there are 16,500 professional athletes and 160,000 undergraduate athletes. Musicians, 40,000 professionals, 150,000 music majors. Dancers, 38,000 professionals, 30,000 undergraduate students. Actors, 43,000 professionals and 30,000 undergraduate students. So you can see that there's more undergraduate students in the athletics. However, when it comes to professional athletes, there's only 16,500. When it comes to musicians, 150,000 music majors and 40,000 professionals. Just to kind of give you a little gauge on how many of us there are. And then we're going to take some perspective here. There's approximately 150 pitches thrown per team in a professional baseball game. Approximately 8,000 steps per field player in a soccer match. Approximately 30,000 steps in a marathon. And then approximately 30,000 notes in Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. A total of 45 minutes. That blew my mind. I still have trouble fathoming this and recognizing that our bodies in 45 minutes are creating and having to use 30,000 notes. Our fingers are moving at least 30,000 times for Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. And that's in a fraction of the time of any athletic event. That does not include preparation. That does not include practice time or rehearsal time. NCAA athletes are limited to 20 hours a week of team practice. Musicians often practice and or rehearse 4 to 8 hours a day, which is over 40 hours a week. We often have many things to practice for, and then of course we want all the performing opportunities that we can get. It starts out as students because we want the experience, and then as professionals because, we need the money. But I don't think that we stop to think about how that could be impacting our bodies if we are in multiple ensembles and having multiple rehearsals and then practicing on top of that for those rehearsals. Within athletic training, there are many different things that are addressed throughout the curriculum and the training. For instance, issues of form, endurance, pacing, efficiency, strategy, nutrition, psychological coping mechanisms. I am not anywhere near close to an expert in athletic training. I pretty much don't know much about it, to be perfectly honest. But I can tell you that we don't have the same resources that athletes have. Many athletic programs have coaching or training teams that are often comprised of more than one coach and medical professionals, including physical therapists, sports psychologists, nutritionists, and kinesiologists. Even if there is a disparity among school-age sports and professional levels, the access of these varied professionals remain in sports. So at the professional level, when there's 16,500 athletes, they have access to all of these and probably more specialists. And we in the music world usually don't have access to most of those. I do think it's fair to say that our music training has provided us with some of this as best as we and our teachers have had. They do address some of these things, but I don't always think that it comes from the latest research and the specialists that athletes have access to. So let's take a look at the traditional musical practice and pedagogy. Musicians often start playing at a very young age. Many pianists, violinists start playing when they're 3, 4, 5 years old. And as they're growing, their bodies are changing, but their relationship to the instrument often does not change. What I mean by that is when they first start learning, they're doing certain movements that are compensating for the size of the instrument. And as they grow, they're not always taking into consideration the fact that their body is changing and the instrument is not. And so that lack of addressing can cause compensation issues and muscle imbalances that can potentially lead to injury within musicians. The teacher is the authority. We have and should have a great respect for our music teachers and music performers. For anyone we come in contact with, we always need to respect. The problem comes when students hear the teacher say something and they think it's the only way. Just because it worked for their teacher or them doesn't always necessarily mean it's the best thing for us as musicians. Also, we have auditions throughout our entire career. It can start as early as middle school for chair placements or professional auditions as we get older. We have a fear of, and we hide injuries. There's a stigma among musicians that if they're injured, that you don't call them. You want to give them a break, so you're like, oh, I won't call you. And so often, many times for financial reasons, musicians hide the fact that they're hurting or that they have an injury because they don't want to lose their work. That's their livelihood. Makes sense, but it's sad that we feel the need to do that, and I would like to change that. We have limited access to trained performing arts medical specialists. It's no secret that athletes and athletics in general make a lot of money, right? And they have that money to support them. We don't always have that available to us. And in the university curriculum, the curriculum is so packed with so many essentials that musicians need. It's difficult to find ways to include that into the curriculum, any sort of body awareness at all. So there have been many studies done in regards to musicians' injuries. And they all come back very, very similar to what this study has shown. It was by an Australian researcher, Dr. Ackerman, and she studied orchestral musicians from 8 professional orchestras, and this study dates to 2012. The number of participants was 377. 84% of musicians experienced pain or injuries that interfered with their playing. 84%. 50% reported pain or injury at the time of the survey, most of which were work-related. So related to playing their instrument. 50% at that time of the survey. Of those who experienced pain or injury in the past, less than 50% reported that they had completely recovered. This data is shown over and over in the different studies. There was one study that was done in 1988 that had over 2,000 participants, and the percentages were very, very similar. So why the difference? Why is there a difference in the approach of athletics to music? Athletic organizations, as I mentioned before, are financially supported by the large fan base, by the sponsors, by ticket sales, concessions, etc. As an outsider looking in, it seems that the priority seems to be on the athletes. They provide what the athletes need: coaching in talking to media, coaching in sports psychology, and kinesiology, how the body moves, how to use the body in the most efficient way to access the most power if you need it, or speed. Athletic talents are well respected and valued. So, how do we close the gap? How can we bring as much of that athletic training that we just talked about with the different specialties? How can we bring that into the music realm? First, we need to acknowledge the financial disparities. It's no secret that in the music world, it's not the most lucrative business. However, we cannot let that determine our outcome. We are creative artists. It starts with us. Each one of us has to take this in our own hands right now. We have to be willing to have an open mind. We have to be willing to hear and investigate and research different ways of doing things and decide for ourselves what works best for us. Respectfully question everything. When I say that, I really truly do want to emphasize respectfully, because each of us as a music educator are sharing things that we know, that we ourselves know to be true or feel is true, and we are doing that to better our students. But when I say question everything, it's up to you to question if it's right for you or if it's anatomically correct. And there's no judgment that needs to happen at any point within that process. That's very important. Because our teachers are trying to do everything they can to share accurate information, and we need to do everything that we can to better ourselves. Don't be afraid to seek help if you don't understand something. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to reach out and find a somatic practitioner. Somatic practitioners are people who specialize in how the body moves. Somatic means body and movement, and it's not talking about the movement of the viscera or the guts. It's talking about how the body is moving in space. Okay, so that's what I mean by somatic practitioner. Utilize all the resources at your disposal. This is a shameless plug, but I offer body mapping every spring. And I realize that it's not possible with some of your schedules. That's not the point. But I am here for you all, and I am providing that class to help share this information. Recognize the mind and body are connected. It's really quite amazing to me. The more work I do in body mapping, the more I realize that our emotions are part of us physically. And when we have an emotional reaction to something, it could be anything, our body holds a physical record of it via tension. When we have tension as musicians, that interferes with our ability to make fluid music, and it interferes with our ability to connect with the audience, and can possibly cause pain and injury. There are many times I feel that we should all be in therapy to help us work through different issues that we might have. There has been in the past a stigma associated with that, but I would like to challenge you if you feel that stigma pressure, I challenge you to overcome that. Because I think that the healthier you are emotionally, the healthier you are physically. The healthier you are emotionally and physically, the better off your musicianship will be. When scheduling practice or rehearsal, be considerate of your body. Our body needs breaks. Our body is not meant to be in one position for a very long time, for hours and hours each day. What tends to happen is when we are in that position for so long, the muscles that we're using to play our instruments become very strong and overworked, and then the muscles that are there to kind of counterbalance that become very weak. So we want to be mindful of how we are scheduling our practice and rehearsals. And also, I'm hesitant to say this, but sometimes it's okay to say no. If it is a matter of your mental, emotional, physical health, it's okay to say no sometimes. There are many somatic practitioners and practices. The good news is that if you don't like one, you can always try another. There are so many different somatic practices, and in just a few, I'll show you some resources for you. And what may work really well for one person may not resonate with another person, and know that that's okay. And you don't have to try to buy in at any point. You can simply just move on and try something else. Okay, this last one, it's okay to translate. What I mean by this is something that we do a lot in body mapping. We hear an instruction from a teacher or a conductor or fill in the blank, whoever is telling us to do something with our body that we know, maybe, hopefully, is inaccurate according to our structure and our anatomy. So what we need to do with that information is we need to ask ourselves, what is this person trying to get from me? Are they trying to get me to take a bigger breath? Are they trying to get me to, play this phrase differently? Are they trying to get me to fill in the blank, whatever that might be. Then you think, okay, but I know that that may not be the best anatomical choice. So how can I achieve that goal that they're trying to get me to do by using my body anatomically correctly? Okay, so you're still trying to get the same result, but maybe you have to translate the direction a little bit inside your mind. So here are a list of some somatics that I am very familiar with. Obviously, body mapping and Alexander technique, I'm quite familiar with, and here are some of their websites, some of their go-to websites. The Feldenkrais method and Franklin method are also really wonderful. All of these have to do with learning about the body and how you move your body. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to, is how do you move your body and learning about it and the accuracies of it. So, I hope that you have found this lecture to be informative. And if you would like to learn more, I am going to be diving in a little bit deeper with the next 3 lectures. The next one is going to be on November 14th, and I'll be talking about preventing injuries. Then in January, performance anxiety. And in April, recovering from an injury. And so these are some of the resources that I accessed during this presentation. And I thank you all so very much for coming out today, and I hope to see you at the next lectures. Thank you.